welcome to the Good Girl Confessional podcast. I'm your host, Sandy Lowres, and the Good Girl Confessional podcast is proudly brought to us by WB40, Women Beyond 40, a platform and magazine for women 40, 50, 60 and beyond who want to be seen. You can check us out at wb40.com. Before we begin today's podcast, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners on which this podcast is recorded and filmed. In my case, it's the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations, and I would like to pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and acknowledge their extraordinarily long history as storytellers. Today in the confessional, I would like to welcome a really beautiful human. Her name is Carol Hay. Carol has had a pretty incredible life. She's a mum of four. She's travelled the world. She and her husband were both in the military in very different organisations. And she has recently brought together 50 women and created a book called Who You Are, 50 Victoria. And it's 50 women from Victoria all over the age of 50, and she encouraged all of us, myself included, to share our stories and to actually tell the world what it is that we're most proud of that we had done in the last 12 months. It's an extraordinary thing that she has done, and like me, she has a purpose of wanting women over the age of 50 to be seen and heard, and to understand that there are so many dynamic, brilliant women in the world ordinary women just like you and me, doing great stuff. So please welcome to the confessional, I'm very excited, Carol Hay.
Hey there! When Sandy's not interviewing kick-ass women, she's hanging out with me at Alex the Seal, a podcast about music and nostalgia. I'm Jo Pybus, and each episode, Sandy and I talk about all the songs that got us hooked up, knocked up, and broken up. Do yourself a favour and search Alex the Seal on your podcast app. Love you, Molly.
Hello and welcome to the confessional, gorgeous Carol Hay. How are you?
Thank you, Sandy. I'm very, very pleased to be here. Nervously in the chair, but here nonetheless.
Please don't be nervous. I will say that even though we are the Good Girl Confessional, confessions are optional.
Right.
But always accepted with grace. We love them.
Oh, I love that.
I'm so thrilled to have you here today. We've been trying to get this to happen because I think that you are the most extraordinary human being, and you've done some pretty incredible projects. And I think the whole world should really know who Carol Hay is. I've been very blessed to have been part of a project that you created, and very blessed to have met you in real life. And I will say you have the most infectious, incredible enthusiasm for life, but also for supporting women over the age of 50.
Yeah, well, thank you. That's so kind. And right back at you, because I'm so thrilled that you did jump on board this last project that I did last year. I mean, it's a leap of faith to jump into a project completely without having met me. We'd never even spoken to each other, and yet you dived in with incredible enthusiasm. And since then, having got to know all the platforms across which you run, your WB40, the magazines, your business, the Women in Business, and this podcast, and then on the side hustle of Alex the Seal, which I love as well. You are a busy lady, Sandy, so I'm equally thrilled to have met you and got to know you, and I think I'm looking forward to many years ahead of crossing paths wherever we can.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's one of the most extraordinary things about what I get to do is that I get to meet so many brilliant women. You are one of those brilliant women. And thank you so much. I will say thank you for your incredible support, because I know that you do support the Good Girl Confessional podcast, and I know that you support Alex the Seal. And I love that, who's with my beautiful co-host, Jo Pybus, who calls herself a late onset feminist. She's brilliant. And we have a lot of fun doing Alex the Seal. It's great.
You take me back. Nearly every time I listen to something, I'll be like, I remember that exactly. Or you'll talk about clothes, or you will talk about food or sounds or like anything. And I think that is exactly what, like, I remember that 80s, 90s music was so powerful music is powerful, isn't it? Anyway, at any stage. And so I love listening to you and Joe delve into the different things. And I feel like I could be listening to myself having the same conversations.
And that's what, we love about it. I think, it's just a joy because, as you say, music is really powerful and it takes us back to different times and places in our life. And whereas the Good Girl Confessional sort of dives into, and we have a lot of fun here too, we dive into the journeys and stories of pretty cool women. Alex the Seal's a little bit different because it's fun and it's a journey into music nostalgia. You've got to love that.
Yep. Isn't it sad that nostalgia, which conjures up black and white photos, is actually in our lifetime?
I know. Can you believe it? I'm far too young for it, Carol. Far too young.
I shouldn't say it's sad because this is the whole thing, isn't it, of celebrating women of a certain age. So it's not sad that nostalgia is our lifetime. It's a joyous celebration of these events. And when our children say, "Oh, have you heard this old song?" and you go, "Oh, old song? I used to dance to that at the blue light discos. Like, it's not old to me."
Exactly that. Oh my God, it's so funny. And it's just, I think that there's a thread that kind of pulls people together when we talk about music. But you're right. It is really a celebration.
Yeah.
Everything that I do, and I know everything that you do, is a celebration of women who are in midlife and then beyond, right? And especially if your focus has been on women 50 or in their 50s, right? And I think that's quite extraordinary. So we've been talking a little bit about your project, but I will say this is the beautiful project. For those watching this, they'll be able to see it. For those not, this is a beautiful book that Carol has pulled together. It is stunning. It's pink, sort of a peachy colour, and it says, "Who You Are, Victoria 50, a Who You Are project by Carol Hay." And Who You Are, Victoria 50, you brought 50 women from Victoria who are 50 and over to be part of this project, to share our stories. And I'm absolutely thrilled, I will say. Here I am. Yay.
Oh, beautiful. What profile number were you, Sandy? What profile number?
I'm number 31.
31. Yeah.
Number 31 with a bullet if I was on the hit chart. And, and it's kind of extraordinary. So tell us about 50, Who You Are, Victoria 50. Tell us about how this journey started, because this was not the first project, was it?
No, I think, Sandy, this book I really feel really emotionally connected to. You're right, it's not my first one, but I think it feels a bit more emotional for me because I wanted to finish it before my 50th birthday. I did it in the year that I was turning 50. And what I wanted to do was really hit my 50s. I mean, I've never been someone who's like, "Oh, I hate getting older," or "No, it's around the corner. What are these wrinkles? What's going on?" Never really had that mindset. But I think what I really wanted to do was celebrate turning 50. It's what a privilege. I mean, we all have far too many friends and people we know who never got there. And I wanted to really hit that time surrounding myself with the stories of women 50 and over in whatever walk of life, and whatever they had done, whatever they had achieved, however they were living, as a real reminder that you don't have to be any particular job title or any particular reach any particular goal to still be an incredible human being with an incredible story to tell, and that in all ways you are still a role model to everyone around you and everyone that you come into contact with, whether those interactions are small or, significant in your workplace or in your home or with your network. I will say that I need to acknowledge Dr. Kirsten Ferguson here as the very initial spark of inspiration for both of my books, and really everything that I have tried to do since really kicking off my Who You Are banner, if you want to call it that. My very first book was in 2017, and it was the same year that Kirsten Ferguson was doing the Celebrating Women project on Twitter. And I loved that project. And if anyone hasn't seen it, or, I'm not sure how, you could probably still track it on on Twitter by using the hashtag celebrating women. But Kirsten shared the profiles of 2 women every day for an entire year. Their whole goal was to kind of really stand up to some of the trolling and really negative commentary that was sitting around women online. And Kirsten turned this, I'm just going to do this and kind of kick it off on the 1st of January, into this global movement that was just powerful. And I remember I submitted, put my application in to be one of the women profiled after thinking, no, of course, going, oh, well, who am I? What have I got to say? Why would I be important in the scheme of things? And when thinking about it more, I thought, why do we think about this about ourselves? Why does everyone that I know of, all these incredible women that I know, why do we all think that we have nothing to say? That just couldn't be more ridiculous.
Boom. And that's why we do what we do, Carol. That's why we do what we do. You're 100% right. I think that one of the big conversations I tend to have, this comes up again and again, is this thing about imposter syndrome, especially with women. Yeah. Especially with women. And I'm guilty of it. I'm sure you've suffered with it. I'm sure every woman.
20 minutes ago, Sandy, when I what have we got this podcast?
See, it's true. And I think, and I should say too, I'm bloody thrilled that you're on here. I am. Because I know it's not an easy thing to put yourself out there. We all know that as women. It is not always an easy thing to put yourself out there, I think, and to share our stories. And especially women, as you say, unless they're in the spotlight or they're in media or they're on television, tend to say, and I get this a lot, women who say to me, who'd really be interested in my story? And I'm like, your story's fascinating and brilliant, and who wouldn't be interested in your story, right?
Absolutely. And I guess that's what, when we were living in Singapore at the time, and I was really inspired by Kirsten, and I thought I could do this here in my network. So I messaged Kirsten straight away and said, may I please use the questions that you use in your profiles, because they get to the heart of
everything.
And I said, this is what I want to do, but I don't want to muddy your waters. I don't want to step on your parade. And I mean, Kirsten walks the walk with celebrating women, and she was instantly supportive and encouraging, and was like, go for it. Anything that rises women up or raises women up is absolutely go for it. And, Kirsten, one of the things that she talks about, I mean, she's an incredible speaker, obviously, in her, everything that she does is amazing. And one of the things that really struck with me from one of her early speeches was about that women, when they're in a position of influence or decision-making, power, authority, the old adage says that you throw down a ladder to make sure that you bring a woman up behind you. And Kirsten says, quite rightly, forget the ladder, throw a net so many women can come up behind you. And I just thought, I'm not in a position of power, nor am I in a position of influence, but what can I do to try and kind of throw a net around as many women as possible, to just try to tap into a little bit of that I felt myself when I was writing my profile for Kirsten, and then also just build on that with a Facebook group and producing a book that had those profiles, and how to run the Facebook group a little bit differently than what was happening in the original project. And could I have a cocktail party, and could we give everyone a book, and could we have reunions, and how could I really kind of drive a real network around it? So yes, the first book happened in Singapore in 2017. We then, and it was amazing, and I always thought I want to do another one. And then as I started heading towards my 50s and coming out of COVID, I think that was the big thing. I thought, we're all so isolated, disconnected, and yet we're all connected in a different way. Maybe it's time for another book. And I thought, right, I can bring together, I'm about to turn 50. I want to do another one of these books. I'm still new to Victoria, so I'm keen to meet people, and here we go. So I guess that's where V50 was born. I thought I'll give it another shot.
I love it. You know what? This V50 and I call it V50, Victoria 50, is amazing.
That's it, yeah.
It is amazing. So can you hold up for everybody, because I do not have a copy of the original, but you do. I'm very happy to.
Oh, the first one?
Yeah, let's have a look at it.
My very tattered one from 2017.
How beautiful is that? So it's blue and pink. It's gorgeous. Celebrating Women Project, Who You Are by Carol Hay. It is beautiful. What an amazing. So how many women were in the original?
So 42, because that is the meaning of life. So that's why I decided to go with 42. This one was a little bit different in the sense that I knew pretty much all the women that are in this book, whereas V50, I branched myself, threw myself out of my comfort zone a bit more to approach women that I didn't know and to very publicly advertise, I guess, for women who were interested. But in this book, I did know pretty much everyone, well, all of them in this book. I accosted a lot of my friends. So this one, you didn't have to be of a certain age. You just had to live in Singapore.
You just had to live in Singapore. And how amazing, because you've lived in different places, which is fascinating to me as well. So you've lived in Singapore and you've lived in Germany and,
yep.
As you say, fairly new to Victoria where you've settled down now, because so you and your hubby, dual military peeps, and your hubby's in the army, which is what took you over to Singapore, I'm guessing, and then Germany.
Yeah.
Cool. So, I mean, what an extraordinary experience to be able to immerse yourself in other cultures, I guess.
Oh, yes. We are so lucky, and we are so lucky to have had those experiences both in Europe and in Asia, with how different those I guess the different places we could travel based out of those two different countries. And we've got 4 children. We only had 2 when we went to Germany, and they were both quite little then. So we really took advantage of any opportunity to travel and just threw the kids into backpacks and off we went. And then got back to Australia, 2 more came along. And, like many people, we thought, well, with 4 children, there's no way we are travelling. It's far too expensive. It's not happening. So we camped. We as a military family, like you said, we moved around a lot. We've lived in Wagga. We lived in Brisbane. We've been in and out of Canberra a number of times. We bought a trailer and we just camped for a few years. And then the opportunity came up for a posting to Singapore. We had kind of promised the kids that they may not be doing a lot more moving. When that came up, we thought this is probably the only way we can, apart from the fact that it was a great job for David, but we're like, right, we might just have to renege on our promise to the kids and take them on an Asian adventure for a couple of years. So we, moved to Singapore, had 3 years there, and then came back to Australia. David got out of the army, and we've plonked ourselves here in Geelong forever. And having moved every 2 or 3 years through both David and my adult lives individually and then as a family, we're now, on Christmas Day of last year, we'd been in this house for 3 years. That's the longest that either of us and our children have lived in the one house for their entire lives.
Wow.
So it was quite a milestone. We're now obviously in our 4th year, and a couple of our children are already saying, I'm ready to move. I mean, we love Geelong, but I think there's that sense of, okay, we've had an experience here. What's next? Yeah. So
beautiful.
There is a thought that sometimes military families have a lot of children, so that when you move so often, if you have a lot, that hopefully down the track, at least some of those children will like you by the end of the The more you have, the more likelihood someone will not hate you for moving them around all the time.
Oh, it's interesting, isn't it? Like, I didn't do too much moving, I will say. My gorgeous dad, my stepdad, was in the Air Force, and so he kind of really took one for the team, I will say, when we were in high school, and he was getting posted around and decided that we would stay put, and he then kind of went off to wherever he was going, Adelaide and different places, and then he would fly home every weekend. I find that now as an adult and as a parent quite extraordinary. I think at the time we were like, oh, this is just our life. But, the moving is not too bad in that, we moved states and then you kind of go, well, you have a very different experience that you never would have experienced had you stayed in one spot, right? So I think your children have gained so much from and I will say too, because you're not just an army wife, not that you're ever just, but, you've had a stellar career yourself in the armed services, for 34 years. I mean, that's not what we're here to talk about today, obviously. But so between the two of you, there was obviously a lot going on. 4 kids.
A lot going on. And I think you're right, Sandy, that there are things that I think our children and children who move, whether it's in military or not, of course, there's things that they deal with that maybe other kids don't have to. But there's always pros and cons to everything, aren't there? There's always people probably who move who say, I wish I just stayed in the one place for the whole time. And then kids who stay in the one place and think, geez, I wish I could travel. So I guess all we can do is is try to make the best of the reality for our children. And for our children, the reality was we moved all the time. We constantly tried to tell them that their stability and their security and their sense of self did not come from the house that we were living in. The memories that we make didn't matter in which town we made them. That people that we love us whether we live next door or we live on the other side of the world. And so we just tried to constantly just to really reassure them that you don't need to see someone every day for them to still love you and think about you. And so what we hope is that that's what they carry on with into their adult life, that sense that love and security and that stability is not about where they are, but who they are.
They are.
Having said that, I don't mean to make the kids that don't move don't have that sense, and I also don't mean to make light of how difficult moving is. So I guess it's, you just deal with whatever life throws at you in your reality as parents and as children, and we just hope that at the end of the day we've got the balance somewhere to all still love each other and talk to each other at the end of the day.
Yeah, and clearly, like, you do have that as a family unit, which is fantastic. I think what's really beautiful, is I've been very lucky to have been to your home. As you say, the longest you've been in one spot. It is a magnificent home, but what struck me was how much love. You can sense the love in that house, and it's quite lovely. So when you invited all of the women in this book, amazingly enough, to come on over to your house, to your own home, to have this launch, and you handed us each a copy of this magnificent book, which was amazing. What a beautiful thing to do. And I think what struck me before is when you said you're fairly new to Victoria, and what a beautiful way to make friendships and to meet other women and to network. And so how did you go about getting 50 women? So tell us about this journey, because it's bloody fantastic.
Well, I started again, probably like I did with my first book, accosting the friends that I had met since we'd come. And of course, we moved to Geelong 2019, so just prior to COVID. Oh no, was it 2018? No, 2019 we moved here. So so we had a year here before COVID hit. So first of all, I accosted people, and I'll tell you what, Sandy, sometimes turning 50 is fantastic. I tell everyone that I'm 50. I don't have now I'm 51. But for some of these new friends of mine, I had no idea if they were in their 40s or their 50s. And so I had to sort of drop into conversation things about 50 to some of them who I knew were already 50, for some of them who could have been 48 or 49 or 50, 51. I had to kind of slide into conversation just to check, rather than saying, would you like to put my book of women over 50? And they're like, what? I just turned 46 or. First of all, I reached out, wrote a letter, because I think that's a really key part. I mean, the key part is I want to explain to people what it's about, and I want to share of myself why I want to do it, because I guess I'm asking for trust right from the start. I'm asking for people to share things with me firstly, if they have met me, what am I doing with this information? Where's it going? And, it's very difficult sometimes all the time, I think. I don't underestimate the leap of faith that takes to jump into something like this. So accosted my family and friends, kind of said to a few of them, if any of your friends would like to, be a part of it, let me know. And then I really struggled a little bit thinking, I don't even know if I know 50 women. How am I going to do this? But I dived then into Facebook, onto online, any groups that I kind of was already in that were talking about menopause, like the Hot Flush, which I think is where you might have seen.
Correct.
So anything like that where I knew there were going to be women over 50, I just put out little teasers. And I guess I figure that people of like mind find each other in some ways. So when people were reading the little blurb that I put out, if that sparked in someone's mind an interest in, what's all that about, enough for them to contact me, that's when I then would send them the letter to explain what I wanted to do and really leave it in their court and, leave it up to them to digest, to think about. And I guess as time, the first few months of it, or the first month or so, it was not that it was silent, but it was me just getting the information out. And then the floodgates just opened. And I had it was all by email messages. Are you the lady who's doing the Fab 50? Or are you this? What's this all about? And it just, women, I think, connected with the message of sharing their stories with a big part of it, with all of us over 50. It wasn't like they were the token ones in a whole, that's who we are. And so that's how it all came about. And before I knew it, I had my 50. And so as you would remember, I had the Facebook group going. It's very important to me with that people send in their profiles before they join the group. So again, I know I put conditions on it. I'm quite, if you want to be a part of it, you do have to jump in without seeing what other people write, because I want it to be authentic.
I loved that, actually. I loved that component of it because I guess because I run the magazine and I run the podcast and whatnot, I really knew straight away what you were doing there. And I thought it's really clever, because I think when you sit back and get to see everybody else's profile, you start to second guess yourself, and this imposter syndrome comes in.
Yeah.
But really what you were asking for was real women, regardless of what we did in our lives, to basically say, hey, this is who I am, this is what I'm about. And so we had to basically throw caution to the wind, throw you our profiles and photographs and
yes.
All right, this is who I am now. I think what's beautiful is the diversity of the women in the Victoria 50. And I imagine in the Singapore, the original, who you are. There's so many extraordinary women in this book.
Oh.
And I was so enraptured reading the stories of the women. But when you had us over at your house, those that could attend, we all go over and you hand us this book, and it was just so beautiful to meet these other women, and we're all signing each other's books.
Yeah.
Right? But it was a really beautiful moment of just solidarity amongst all of these incredible chicks who were 50 and over. And you go, tell me about you, and who are you, and what are you doing? And one of the women actually at your house said to me, I don't know actually how I ended up in this book, because really my story is not very exciting. And and I said to her, wait a minute, you can't say that, because you're in it. You're in this book.
Exactly.
Whatever, you were in this book, and what you do, what all of us do matters. And I said, and here I am saying to her, it matters so much, because when this is sitting on your coffee table and your friends come over and they feel like you're feeling right now, they're going to see you in that, and they're going to be inspired as well that, oh my God, we are somebody. We mean something, and we should be visible, and we should be seen.
Oh, Sandy, I mean, ditto to all of that. And I mean, as we were saying, of all of the letters that I sent out, I would say 90% of the responses that I got initially, the very first reaction was, but I've got nothing to say. Or perhaps not 90, but so many women were like, well, why would you ask me? I've got nothing to say. And then even when the women who were approaching me and I would send the letter out, they'd say, oh, actually, no, I probably don't. They would second guess themselves. And then I think I probably tried to turn into a bit of a cheerleader and really not beg them, but just really remind them why we were doing this or why I wanted to do this. And the Facebook group, I think, is a really important part of it, because when every profile went up, every other woman's on there liking, commenting, like interacting. And exactly like you said, one of my favourite moments is that moment when the books get given out. And as you remember, I very specifically don't give you your book directly.
I love that.
Each other. So you have to, each book is named. It's got your profile number in the front. I make it very specific. I write a note to each person, so then you can't get a random book. Yeah.
Read that. But I'm just holding up this beautiful handwritten note that Carol put in my book and put in everybody's book. And I loved that as well. So she had, you just handed them out to random people. But then what happened was, this is so beautiful, we had to find each other. We had to go and seek out our book.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that moment. We ended up having 2 functions, because trying to get 50 very busy women from all across Victoria into the one place is difficult. The first one, I think we had maybe 30 of us, and there were maybe 15 at this, or maybe not.
So.
Yeah, something on it.
There. Yeah.
Both were amazing experiences. The noise of those books going out, though, as people open, and what I love too is when most people, when they open the books and they go, oh, I've got number whatever, and I'm number 50 in mine because I made myself the last profile.
You did.
When they turn to the profile of the lady that they're trying to find, most people read it first. So no one actually, it's not as though people go, oh, number 20, and I'll run and find Sandy and hand it over. No. There's a reading, and then there's a, oh my goodness, and a talking, and everyone's chatting and in each other's face and laughing and hugging, and that moment, the energy that I feel from that, like, that makes me so happy. Like, I really just, in that moment, I think all of that time, it's not an effort, you know what I mean? It's not an effort, but all that time, it's worth it for this moment, is just amazing.
I think it's worthwhile pointing out, though, that to put something like this together, I know that when we put the print magazine together, and, we're currently running late with issue 8, and we're very aware of that. Sorry, everyone.
I'm aware of it because I love your magazines.
You subscribe because you're brilliant. The work and the effort that goes into creating something like this, a hard-covered book, by the way. Can you listen to that? It's a hardcover. It's beautiful, but just the artwork, the layout, where the pages are going to go, how many pages you can have, what quality of paper are you going to use, what fonts are going to be, and also, plus the chasing up of people. And I know I'm really bad for this because I was so busy, and Carol was chasing me up probably 3 times going, oh, Sandy, where's your story? What's going on? Oh, where are your images? Oh, yeah. Sorry, Carol, I'm on my way. But there's a lot of time, energy, and effort. But as you say, it's also the encouraging that you did and the cheerleading that you did. And while I was really quite gung-ho to be part of this project, because I think it's phenomenal and it really aligned with everything I was doing, in terms of women should be visible and our stories matter. Yeah. I imagine, and I met, as I said, women on that day, beautiful, incredible women who have amazing stories.
Yeah, amazing.
I don't know, this very self-effacing, I don't know why I ended up in here. Yeah. Oh my God, look what that woman's doing. Or look, and you go, no, because that's the whole point of this, is not to compare yourself to others. The whole point of this was for us to celebrate being in our 50s and understanding that our stories matter, that our journeys matter, and that we have something to say, right?
Oh, entirely. And I think too, the process of getting from being interested to sending me the profile, that process as well, I think that is very telling for people about themselves. So a lot of the feedback I've had from both books was how hard it is to answer a question about yourself. There's an extra question in the V50 from my original book, which was about what have you done in the last 12 months that you are proud of? And I cannot tell you the number of people, Sandy, that responded with, I'm proud of my children.
Right.
And now we're all proud of it. Look, that is a valid pride. And I'm proud my children are such wonderful human beings. I'm proud my child passed year 12. I'm proud. And I very gently and respectfully asked for resubmits on those people.
Yeah.
I said, yes, I'm sure your children are fabulous. And I'm sure for all of us who, for those who are mothers, or, you know, who have children or, you know, who are proud of their partner, their family. That's fantastic. What I wanted for this was, tell me something about you. Like, have you done something? You know, I'm proud I was the rock that held my family together in COVID. I'm proud that I supported my, you know, some people were, you know, like you said, everyone had amazing stories. People were supporting relatives who were not well. People were getting promotions at their jobs. But those were not the things that these women instantly thought of when asked, what have you specifically done in the last 12 months that you were proud of? And then when I would prompt them and say, come on, yes, I want something about you. And then would come back, oh, you know, I pitched a newspaper article that got printed. I'm like, why was not that the very first thing you thought of? So it's telling, I think, that process, it's not just about this end product. I think the process of getting to write your profile, look, for some women as well also, how long it took. Some people are like, right, these are the questions. I've got 2 weeks, done. And they followed the rules. You'll remember I had a word.
Oh, you had rules.
I had rules. Some people are very rule-based and were like, right, I'm only allowed to write 3 sentences. Here's my 3 sentences. Here's the due date it's in. And for other women, and this is part of getting the profiles that I loved so much, was that just for those people that were like, okay, she said 3 sentences, I'm giving her 3 pages and she can pick the rules. That's telling about the kind of person that you are as well. And I never said, you know, when I didn't say no, but I certainly edited with permission, and some of them to the smallest font that was possible to fit 1 page, in order to make sure that the true gist of what people were submitting could go into the book. So I think the process hopefully was helpful for some. And I did get feedback from people to say, this is the first time I've thought about myself in years. It's reminded me of what I can do. It's made me think about who I want to be, because one of the questions is, who do you hope to inspire? Are you being the person that you actually want to be in your 50s? And if not, how, you know, people were like, oh, maybe I should go back and study. So I'm not saying that this is life-changing. What I just mean is, I think for some people it gave them a bit of a window to do some self-reflection, hopefully acknowledge their amazingness, maybe just remind themselves that if there was something else they wanted to do, that they can still do it.
And that we are independent beings in our own right. We're not just somebody's mother, or we're not just that worker, or we're not just whatever it may be, right? I think that's such a powerful thing, and something that, you know, was really at the forefront of, for me as well, with WB40, the same thing was saying to women, who are you? You know, like us away from, you're not, you know, your other things. So when you look at yourself, when you look internally, but part of my messaging and what I do as well is that it's difficult for women 50 and over sometimes to view themselves as being dynamic and important, because they're not seeing themselves reflected back in everyday media, in television. We see incredible movie stars, of course, over the age of 50, but where are the real women, and where is, like, we're not seeing a lot of that. And that was my motivation, say, for WB40. I think what's fascinating about this as well, and I really want to make sure everybody knows this, it's so important. You didn't charge anybody any money to be in this book. You created it. But the most remarkable part of all of that was you didn't actually, you didn't get us to pay for the book. You haven't sold the book. And you have given every single woman, so 50 women, a copy of this extraordinary book. And what you asked us in return, so this makes me really emotional, but I loved it. What Carol asked us in return for this extraordinary gift and the privilege of being in this book was that we had to leave it on our coffee table or somewhere prominent in our house, and we had to be brave enough to share it, show it to our friends. I'm now sharing
your profile. Show your
own profile, right? We had to show our own profile, but also the book. And for me, when I showed the book to friends and family, and it sits on my coffee table quite proudly, I also said, oh, you should read some of the credible stories of the other women in this book. Because that's the thing, right? Yeah. The thing is that I think that was an act of bravery, what you were asking every woman in this book to do. Now, you've got some extroverted women in this book, like my good self, who'd be quite happy to. I'm a pro-aging advocate. For me, it's like, yes, read the book, look at the book, see all the women. But I imagine for some of the women in the book, as you say, that was kind of almost confronting.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. I think that's also reflected for some of the women in particular when you've got to provide 4 photos, and one of them is find a photo you love of yourself. Now, the number of people that was the hardest thing of the whole profile, and not being able to find a photo of themselves. But how ridiculous, because when we all look at each other's photos, when I go through this book, I see beautiful, incredible, extraordinary women doing amazing things. And so, yes, for some women, yes, well, for most women, it is difficult. I think the little challenge from me at the end to say, please show people this book so that you can say, I'm in a book of amazing women. Yeah, that is an intentional, difficult challenge, I guess. It's not that I know that's difficult, but I think the benefits and hopefully then maybe the flow on into other areas of your life, even just a little snippet, I think that's worth me throwing that challenge out there.
I couldn't agree more. And I think it's so important that those women, though, were able to take that book home and show their families and show their friends and say, oh, I did this very cool thing. Look what I'm in a book. Like, I'm in a book. I mean, that's huge.
Well, Sandy, sorry to interrupt you there, but at the very first cocktail party, we actually had a number of husbands come along. Husbands and partners came. And the same in Singapore. I don't think we had any partners on the day that we had, but I think I loved the fact that there were some husbands that came, and that first one, every single one of those husbands that came, when I forced you all to listen to my little speech about the book and why I wanted to do it, they all came up to me afterwards. 2 of them had got quite emotional and had a few tears thinking about, one of them said, made me really think about the fact, the bit we were talking about before about women being invisible. And women over 50 being invisible, and makes me think about what my wife or my partner is dealing with. So, yes, partners, like in Singapore, we had some children come along, some teenagers come to listen to people talk about their mums. Like, so you're right. For family and friends, for partners to see that their partner in their own right has been recognised and acknowledged is powerful.
It's extremely powerful. And something that, as you say, and quite rightly so, Dr. Kirsten Ferguson, when she said, throw out the damn net, like, honestly, what she started for a lot of women was such a powerful, powerful movement, because what it did was get the rest of us going, well, what else can I do?
What else can we do?
How can I be a part of this bigger picture of helping other women to rise, of bringing our younger sisters up with us as well, because I think that's important. I love in this book, one of the things that you asked us, and as you said, you asked us a series of questions, and you asked us all the same questions, which was powerful as well. But you asked us what the 3 words to describe our life was in that moment. And I'm reading yours because I love it.
Have you? Oh, my goodness.
So your 3 words,
flip to my page.
Your 3 words are galactic, connection, adventure. And I love that. I love it. And one of the things that you shared in your story was that during COVID, you started like community groups, online groups to help people feel supported. And I think that speaks volumes. This book speaks volumes about the very nature of who you are, Carol, which is you're a connector, but you're a person who wants to bring people together. And I think at the heart of everything you do, that to me kind of screams, this is Carol.
Oh, well, I'm glad. Well, that's really kind, Sandy. Thank you. I mean, I thought you were going to ask me to talk to you about why I love Galactic, and then I was going to have to dive into my love of Battlestar Galactica and science fiction. And then I thought that's a whole nother podcast altogether.
It is a whole nother podcast, but I love that you shared it with us anyway. So Battlestar Galactica, I've got to say that my mum was a huge Battlestar Galactica fan. She loved all of that stuff. Star Trek,
Yes.
all of it. Loved it all.
See, I do too. And in fact, Battlestar Galactica, there's a reimagined series. Again, I'm not going to get on my high horse about science fiction, but I loved science fiction from a very, very young age. And I think for me, when I later in life thought back about why I love science, and I still am passionate about science fiction, is because in science fiction worlds, and again, I guess as a military person, very often there are women in leadership roles, warrior roles, in worlds in which those women are fully entitled to be in that space and no one questions it. No one asks why there's a Catherine Janeway in Star Trek, or, Starbuck, well, that's another Battlestar Galactica story. But, there are these women in science fiction worlds where they are powerful. And I would I think I just loved that. And I guess even the warrior women, I identified with women in those worlds because I kind of thought, well, I'm not in a science fiction world, but I'm following the path of some of these women who are fighters and warriors and fighting for peace and fighting to investigate space. So I know there's a nerdy aspect, but I think there's a deeper one. And I think young girls and boys, but young girls should read science fiction. Find these worlds in which women have incredible roles where they are not challenged and it doesn't seem it's completely normal. So I think that, yes, nerdy, but deep as well.
Look, I don't think it's nerdy. I think that you're right. I think that the other thing about science fiction, although I am not a huge science fiction buff, my kids are really into Marvel and whatever, right?
Yeah.
What I have recognised is exactly that there are really strong female characterisation. There's strong women, as you say, in leadership positions and this was quite normal, as you say, for them to be normal. But the other thing about that world, the science fiction world, is the diversity. And so you get people from all different planets who live together in harmony and they're all friends and I think that there's a lot to be said for the messaging that is going out. And in more recent time, I think in social media, of them recognising powerful women of colour, powerful, diverse women all over the place who should be in leadership roles. Absolutely, right? So, so I think that's a really fantastic point. I hadn't really, I've never delved into science fiction with anyone on the podcast before, but I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think it's quite right.
Well, see, Dune was one of my first books that I fell in love with. I'm a Dune fanatic. I can look around me and I can see I have Dune. I won't even show you, but I have these characters around me that are from. So, yeah, I think when I just had to really think later on in life, why do I love this? Like, why do I love everything to do with science fiction? And I think that's where, apart from the whole great characters and great stories, I do like that. That to me, I think, is probably why on some level I really connected with reading in that genre as a teenager, and then going to join the Navy and following a military career, I did turn to some, like Star Trek, like Battlestar Galactica, like other TV shows or movies where women were in those positions of military power, because we don't have a lot of representation in other areas where I could turn to back in the 90s.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, that's powerful and very true. Yeah. I think, I find that really interesting. And my dad being in the Air Force, he would constantly come home and talk to us about the women that he worked with. And years later, I realised it was a very conscious choice that he was making. We didn't really hear about, we met people, obviously. We met some of his colleagues, but we didn't really, he never sort of raved about the men, but what he did do was rave about the women. And I think years later, I had this conversation with him and I said, you did that so deliberately. And he said, well, of course I did. Yeah. Because I want you to understand as a girl that you can go out in the world and you can do different things. And he goes, and sometimes you're going to have to challenge the status quo to get there. Yeah. I think that's kind of a powerful message, right? And something that I have then, passed down to my kids, I guess, especially my daughter. But also my son.
Your dad did that, though, because there were particularly of a certain generation of men it was confronting suddenly having women alongside them in at sea or ashore in whatever role it was. It's really great for your dad to acknowledge that actually talking up the women that were around him, for you, not only did it normalise it, but it really, you could admire those women for what they were doing, rather than if he was coming home and saying, oh, I've got there's 3 women in my section and they're, whatever. I think what a great thing for your dad to do. That's awesome.
Exactly that. And I do think, he was really partnered with my mum, who was they were so different, but strong left-wing feminist. Weirdly partnered with a pretty stoic military man. I think, but it worked, right? And I think that they kind of bolstered each other in that way. And I think what he learned from my mother was exactly that, was, we need to make a better world. And I think he was a person very strong with social justice as well, which I think, again, is probably themes that you see through science fiction, the sense of social justice. And I think social justice for him was defending and sticking up for and promoting those women, because they didn't always have a really easy time in the military. So I think that was important. Incredible. I think, you have done something extraordinary, Carol. I'd like to say to everyone, you can rush out and buy this book. You can't. You can't, because that's the other really beautiful thing about this book. It is actually it's a limited edition. It's a 50.
You've got to be in it to win it.
You've got to be in it to get your hands on the copy. But what I would say is that, if you get a chance to check out any one of these, any of the book, both books, do so and look at the extraordinary women in this book. There's just incredible women who have just done so many cool things in their day-to-day lives.
In their day-to-day lives, and women who really, with a little bit of prompting, once you find out who they are beyond who they present, whether they're someone picking their kids up from school next to you, or someone that you bump into, or whether they're your GP, or whoever they are in your life, that actually beyond that, there's we're all connected in many ways. It's about finding ways to make that connection safe and to celebrate that connection. And I feel so thrilled. Like this, I see this as a gift to myself. It was a very important part of the process that there's no money involved in the whole thing, because to me, I really get so much out of it. And I budgeted like crazy and figured that for my 50th birthday, I wanted to give myself a present. And this really felt, that sounds a bit, but it really did feel like that it was something I wanted really to, I didn't want to tarnish anything with it being, if you want to be a part of it, you've got to pay me some, that makes me feel quite uncomfortable. So it was a gift to me, to myself, to do this project, because I feel like not only did I get so much out of doing it, but I've met incredible women like you. There are plenty of people who I now know more about, people that I already did know, but now I know more about them. And I can't wait till our reunion. 5 years, Sandy? What do you think?
Oh, I'm excited. Yes. So one question I didn't ask, how long did it take from start to finish? From the
so when did we start? I think, on the back, February to May. There we go. I forgot to put that on there. I started February. My intent was to run slow, maybe do 2 or 3 a week, so that my last one was in September on my birthday. But I just got so in the groove. I think I ended up, some weeks I put out 1 every day. Some weeks I'd just do 3. I had them ready to go. The joy that it gave me, I was very impatient. I was like, I have to wait till Monday. No, I'm just going to do it today. So February till May.
Love.
So in fact, I guess I wasn't technically 50 when the project finished, but I was definitely 50 by the time we got together, because we went into lockdown again July of 21-ish, I think.
Yes.
Is that about right? June, July. So the second half of the year, we weren't able to get together anyway. So by that I turned 50 in lockdown, sitting at my kitchen bench with lots of champagne and gifts coming, and it was wonderful with my family. And then we came out, and I guess we started in January of this year. And then I think when we got together, maybe March.
Yeah.
By that stage, yes, I was well and truly 50 and, concluded the project. And I guess now I'm thinking, what's next? I don't quite know, but I feel like something's bubbling, but I'm not quite sure yet what or how or when it might all come to fruition.
Well, I was going to ask you what's coming next, but you've already answered that for me. So I guess the big question I really want to ask you before we wind this up, because I'm just loving this so much and we could talk for hours, Carol.
We could.
We really could. So what does being a 50-year-old woman, what does turning 50 mean to you?
I feel like the people around me that are also 50, and I don't discount 47, 48 and 49-year-olds, what an amazing group of people. Like I just feel like we can really do anything. We can do anything, but we don't carry with us some of the baggage of earlier. I feel like I'm more myself now than perhaps 10 years ago, when maybe I was still perhaps a little more worried about how I presented to the world. Not in a debilitating way, but maybe just conscious of a little bit more than perhaps now. I have much less interest in what other people think, because I more feel that the people that I know, the people that I care about, the people that I love, we all love each other like there's a real unconditional love and celebration of, again, who you are. I don't want to harp back to that, but I do kind of feel like embracing those relationships in my 50s is such a deep, beautiful connection with people. And that, look, whether society's ready for us, but I think the change is happening, that it is happening. It's because of people like you and, Jane Caro, who you've had on your podcast, and other women who are vocal about the invisibility of women of a certain age. We now talk about it. It's now is something that's on the drum, or, something that's raised on Q&A in different social media landscapes. It's being talked about. So I think it's starting, and whether or not, maybe not necessarily for our generation, but for our children, for our daughters, our daughter-in-laws, our if we're mentoring someone who's in their 20s or 30s, what I feel like that for their 50s for those women will hopefully be like nothing that they would even think that there is a ceiling to their value, their productivity, or their ability to change the world, that it doesn't stop. And I feel that because the connections between women of this age are powerful.
Oh, I love this so much, Carol. What a beautiful bloody answer. No, what a beautiful answer. I always say, when you get women together, when women work together, magic happens.
Yes, I agree.
This is proof, yet more proof of the magic that can happen when women get together. Thank you so much for including me in this extraordinary project. I am humbled and grateful to be alongside yourself and all of the other women in this book. It is beautiful. I can't wait for the reunion as well. We'll do a little, where are they now?
Perhaps we'll make it, I'll have to think whether I make it a challenge reunion where you've all got to do certain obstacles to get to the reunion point, or whether it is literally just an easy joining together. I will ponder that over the next few years, Sandy, and see how we go. But thank you. I'm so grateful for you and for all the women who did come forward to be a part of this. I could tell the second you arrived at my front door, I thought, I have a kindred spirit in just in friendship, and you're only up the road from me, actually. So I think we have other opportunities to get together outside of official work stuff. But you're a busy lady. It's hard to, it's always hard to find time, but I'm so pleased to have met you. I'm so thrilled. Thank you for inviting me to talk and cheerleading me on to come onto this podcast. This did feel like I said, 10 minutes before, I was like, do I just quickly text Sandy and say that I'm not feeling well and I have to
And, you know, as you said, with the women in the book, and with this podcast, quite often, you know, as I say, we've got some really beautiful, well-known guests on this show, but we also have a lot of beautiful, unknown guests on this show. But my big thing is every woman who's on this podcast should be known and their story should be heard. There's a reason that you're on the podcast. You're extraordinary. Thank you for encouraging women to shine and to tell their stories and to be visible. You are absolutely brilliant, Carol. Hey, I adore you.
Thank you, Sandy. Right back at you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Ta-da.
Thanks for listening to the Good Girl Confessional podcast. The Good Girl Confessional podcast is brought to you by WB40, Women Beyond 40 magazine. Available now at WB40.com. The Good Girl Confessional podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen to quality podcasts. We're also now available on YouTube. We chat with really interesting women about their hard-won wisdom, but it really helps us if you can subscribe, like, and share the podcast. Thanks so much for your support. Bye for now.